Hello everyone, grade 10. This will be the last part of biology, inshallah. So the last time we actually stopped at world food supplies. So practically not enough food is available like in each country, or sometimes it's not being equally distributed. Because of for an example, fast increase in population, sometimes increasing of the usage of crops for fuel, or decreasing the process of farming itself due to the climate change or urbanization. Okay, the main, for an example, we'll come here to another part which is called famine, which normally is starvation. What are the causes of starvation? Sometimes it goes for the rapid rate of population increase, sometimes for the long term of climatic change, and sometimes unequal distribution of food, droughts, floods, soil erosion, economic pressure. All those things actually lead to the starvation. Okay, we've got something called the monoculture, which is the continuous production of one type of crop that is often genetically uniform. The negative impacts for this process, or this sort of thing, is that if a natural disaster occurs, the whole crop would be wiped out. If pests and disease attacked a crop, it could harm it easily, and also using large field and pesticides reduce the variety of species. The negative impacts of intensive livestock production is that the welfare issues for the livestock and diseases can spread more easily among them, and also that the waste can actually pollute land and waterways nearby. What is a habitat destruction? For an example, I have a lot of species growing and reproducing in a specific environment, or the environment that actually suits them. So the environment here, or the place where they normally feed and reproduce in, is called a habitat. If I've got a piece of land and normally deers or zebras or whatsoever, they actually live there, and suddenly I just wanted to have this piece of land in order to make some business, like hotels, just like a compound, anything. So when I take it, I won't say ruining it, but practically they're actually ruining it. So it's more likely I'm just destroying this environment instead of letting these species living in a harmony there. I'm just kicking them out and taking whatever it's theirs to make it mine. So practically here they don't have a proper place to live in, the place that they usually, or they grew up in and they live peacefully in. I took it for my own reasons. So it could be I'm just cutting down the trees, especially if it's a forest, well known in America and a lot of countries around the world. So practically it's habitat destruction as well. The reasons for habitat destruction is increased area for food crop growth, livestock production and housing, and also extraction of natural resources, marine pollution, and through the altering food webs and food chains, humans can have a negative impact on habitats. The effects of deforestation. If I actually cut down the forests, I'm reducing the biodiversity and destroying the habitat, and that all may lead to an extinction of that sort of species, because as you know, we've got some specific species that actually grow in not just grow, also grow up in that sort of area, the panda or koala or any sort of species. And it will be I'm threatening its life, so I will no longer have that species anymore. The loss of carbon dioxide fixation, so practically the carbon dioxide here will be increased, because as we all know that the presence of trees and plants around us increases the amount of oxygen. So if I cut it down, so the probability here, the balance will just be imbalance again, and the carbon dioxide amount will rise, so practically we'll have something called global warming. Also, the soil erosion, tree roots cannot retain soil, so it goes into the river, making the water dirty and cause blockage, and also the soil becomes infertile or less fertile. Practically the crops won't be growing properly in that sort of soil, and sometimes they won't grow at all. And also floating here, like usually 75% of water is absorbed by foliage, root system, or evaporates. After deforestation, water accumulates in the valleys. A major thing here we have, and I'm pretty much sure that you already had it through grade 5, 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, which is pollution. Pollution here, we've got a variation in pollution. We've got water and air pollution. We've got so many pollutions here. For an example, the most important ones are the water and air pollution. What is pollution? It's more likely as damaging something which was like very, very normal, like the air itself. If I'm going to say like we have air pollution, someone would just come along and I was like, what is air pollution? Air pollution here is more likely as increasing the levels of the bad substance or the unclean substance into the air, leading to a lot of problems for the human, for the plants, for everyone. As for humans, like having too much unwanted, I wouldn't say unwanted, but more practically as a damaging gases, it will actually irritate the respiratory system for the human being, causing a lot of diseases. The chemical waste and sewage in rivers result in water not being drinkable and cannot be used in a proper way, and sulfur dioxide dissolves in rain, causing acid rain, which increases acidity of lakes and leaches aluminium out of the soil, causing the fish gills or damage, eventually killing them. This can be fixed by adding calcium hydroxide, slaked lime. As you'll know, it's acidic, so in order to make it neutral, I will add something which is totally hydroxide or alkali. And also it destroys top of the trees, and aluminium damages tree roots, which equalize, eventually it will give me a dead tree. Important nutrients will be leached away, and also the sulfur dioxide poses health hazards for human, like asthma suffers. So that's what I was actually talking about, the respiratory system, and also damages the limestones, building and sculptures, and only a few crops can be grown on an acidic field. The pollution due to pesticide. Sometimes I would have a pollution due to a pesticide, like for an example, insecticide, which we normally use it to kill insects. That means it meant to kill insects which eat crops but can kill others as well. Useful insects such as bees, which are pollinators, or bioaccumulation, they increase in the dose of a toxin on some like food. The herbicides, it's like we use them to kill the weeds that we don't want them around the plants that we're actually growing, but sometimes it can be harmful to the animals which they eat the plants. The nuclear fallout, especially like near those places where some sort of like nuclear experiments have occurred, and sometimes we'll have something called leakage or uncontrolled experiments. So practically when it goes out to the environment, it damages a lot. The radioactive particles are sprayed into the atmosphere in a nuclear accident or bombing. These particles rain back to Earth from clouds, sometimes far from the accident site. And the radioactivity damages the DNA and causes cancer and radiation illness at every level of food chain. Non-biodegradable plastics, like when we throw plastics in the beach, or at the beach, or like in lake or anything, like the birds will get choked, the fish and other species as well, and also fill up the animals' stomachs so they can't eat food, and collect it in the rivers to get in the way of fish. Acid rain here is like when we burn a coal, and like what does it get out of the coal when it's burnt? It's like sulfur oxides, and when it reaches the clouds and the rain is practically a bit acidic, but when it reaches and mixes with these gases, it turns to be completely acidic, and when it falls as acidic rain, which damages the human being and the animals and plants as well, caused by sulfur dioxide burning fossil fuels and nitrogen oxides as they dissolve and cause acid rain, and also it damages the trees and plants and kill the fish and other river life. The prevention here is more likely as a catalytic converters. In factories, slaked lime neutralizes these acidic oxides and use of flue gas desulfurization. The global warming, we all know what is global warming, so practically is an increase in average temperature of the earth started at the same time as human began burning fossil fuels, and scientists really believe nowadays that fossil fuels are causing this, not proven yet. So increasing carbon dioxide and methane concentration in the atmosphere can cause an enhanced greenhouse effect and leading for the change of the climate. As we all know, almost a whole mountain of ice in the North Pole has melted, which causes a slight rise in the sea and ocean levels, and that's not a good thing. The negative impact of female contraceptive hormones in watercourses, reduces sperm count in men and feminization of aquatic organisms. And also eutrophication, when water plants receive too many nutrients, fertilizers put in soil by farmers, you have to have it in an adequate amount. And filterizers with nitrates, detergents with phosphates leach into the river and lakes after rain. And water plants grow more than the usual. They block sunlight and kill the other plants beneath them. It's more likely as a survival sort of a battle. And they die and sink to the bottom. And sometimes the bacteria and fungi decompose, remains using the oxygen and decreasing the oxygen concentration, and other fish and creatures may die from oxygen starvation. The conservation, the whole maintaining sort of process. We've got something called a sustainable resource and sustainable development, and they can be sustained using education, legal codes, restocking. And then we've got the natural resources like the water, the fossil fuels, and the recycling, and all those parts of conservation. Here are factors favoring growth and factors controlling the growth. The ones that are favoring the growth, you've got lower infant mortality, the higher life expectancy, better nutrition, better housing, better sanitation, and medicine and vaccination to make sure that they have a proper way of growing. You're at least you're managing 80% of keeping the human being in a normal state, and in order to grow and have a much life expectancy than the ones who actually invaded by diseases or war or starvation. And that will be the lesson for today. Thank you.